Hi there, my name is Redo Meyer.
And I'm Ian Nee Lewis.
This week, we find out what's up with SMS replacement app WhatsApp Messenger.
We take a bite out of the GroupMe 4 beta to see if we like the new flavor.
Turns out it tastes a lot less like fruit than it used to.
And a lot more like ice cream.
And we discover that instant messaging classic Trillian has not only survived the apocalyptic instant messaging wars of the early 2000s, but has risen from the ashes to flourish in the mobile space.
All that and more this week on the App Clinic.
This week we're looking at instant messaging apps, which turns out to be a critical part of mine and Ian's team workflow.
Yeah, what you may not realize is that Reto and I never speak directly to one another.
In fact, we don't even ever be in the same room. We're actually in opposite sides of Building 44 right now.
That's right, Reto's not here at all. So that means IM apps are critical for us to get things done.
Let's start by looking at WhatsApp.
WhatsApp Messenger was by far our most popular candidate this week, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And you can see here that they've done a pretty good job on their landing page on Google Play. It's one of the things that they've done a little bit wrong here. So they've got a great logo, which I really like to see. But what they've done, which I think they could really improve on, is their feature graphic, which is effectively just a combination of their logo, the app name, and a bunch of screenshots. Now, it turns out that there are other places on the Google Play listing for your logo, app name, and screenshots, and so it's kind of a wasted space. So they've done the right thing in having a feature graphic, but they could do a lot more with what they've got.
Sure.
So what is this app? It describes itself as a superpowered replacement for SMS messaging, and I'd say it pretty much lives up to that claim. It can do all of the regular instant messaging type behavior that you'd expect, which is basically sending instant messages to other people, all without having to rely on a cell network connection in order to do so. So the big plus here is that if you don't have an unlimited text messaging plan, you can send messages to your friends at no cost, which is nice. As a bonus, you can also do multimedia stuff, so you can send pictures, images, videos, movies, all of that sort of stuff, which you can theoretically do with MMS, but this makes it a lot easier. And of course, it also supports offline messaging, which is nice. They try and keep things as simple as possible by tying everything into your phone number rather than having a secondary account, which is nice, but it does mean that you can't use this app on tablet devices. And sure enough, they've actually blocked installation for those platforms, which is a little bit disappointing, frankly, because it really does limit the utility of the app. Given that it's transferring data over the internet, why force me to depend on having a mobile number and having a device with a mobile connection? So as you can see from this screenshot, I think WhatsApp Messenger could really do with a full UI overhaul, really bringing it up to date with Holo themes and genuinely presenting a more consistent and intuitive UI navigation structure. I'm not going to go too much detail into that. That's kind of Roman's wheelhouse. I'm going to let him and the guys comment more on that aspect on Tuesday's Android Design in Action.
But I think we do have to say that skeuomorphic is fine, but it's pretty old school to just slap some sort of random picture behind your stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, if you're using skeuomorphism as a technique to try and make users more comfortable with the app so that they feel more familiar with the expectations, then that's a great idea. Here it just looks like, white and black backgrounds look kind of boring. Let's stick something behind, maybe a faux rock effect. And that, frankly, doesn't really add to it. It just makes the whole thing look a little bit untidy.
True. So the elevator pitch for GroupMe is that it's like your own private Twitter, and I think that's a pretty accurate description. Awesome.
My fault. Sorry.
No. It's cool. Take your time. All right. We've used GroupMe a lot on the Android team. When we go to a conference like Google I/O, it's tough to stay in sync with the whole team. And if you don't stay in touch, well, you miss things like the $100 shots of Glenn Roths that Dan Galpin missed out at I/O 2012. That was a good night. And thanks, Shannon. We will pay you back someday. Anyway, GroupMe isn't perfect, but so far it's been the most reliable solution for keeping our group in sync. And it works via push messaging, but it can also send messages via SMS. So it works even if you don't have a data plan. And that's pretty important if you're in Shanghai or Barcelona or Sao Paulo.
Or the I-280 between Cupertino and Sunnyvale.
Well, that's true, yeah. There's some sort of, rip in the fabric of reality down there that disturbs anything that gets too close. Speaking of which, GroupMe used to look like this, which made it feel a lot less like an Android app. And the speech bubbles not only make me feel like I've accidentally picked up someone else's device, some hipster's device, but they also waste space and clash with the Android action bar at the top of the screen. The redesign's a better use of space, and it feels a lot more like Android. It's even got some nice touches like the embedded map view, and that's great for finding out where the party is. In fact, I remember in Barcelona, we were trying to find the party for, gee, how long was it, Dan? It was like hours, right?
We walked around for hours.
Yeah, and we couldn't find it.
But in Barcelona, everywhere's a party. Like, just open the nearest door.
That is true, but we were looking for a specific party.
Yeah, the great ragers, you know.
We didn't want to get fired, let's just put it that way.
Well, you didn't want to be like Dan and miss out on the free booze.
Exactly. Well, my only objection to the redesign is the way they've changed the action bar. So GroupMe has jumped on the drawer bandwagon. So not only do they take away the regular up affordance, but they also got this this 3-bar thing that I guess is starting to be acknowledged as the universal drawer pattern, but I'm still a fan of the up affordance. And apparently they didn't get the memo about the design guidelines for drawers. Just in case you're in the same boat, here's the memo. The main takeaway is that drawers should slide out under the action bar, not push the action bar out of the way. That's important because your action bar still needs to be contextual. It's still your up affordance. We don't want it to arbitrarily leave the screen. But let's not get too caught up in the design. That's really Roman's job. Let's go ahead and move on. Overall, the beta looks like GroupMe is moving in a great direction. I love the way they've worked with media. A lot of the recommendations that we've given about using larger pictures and alpha text over the pictures just make it look fantastic. Honestly, the only thing that I really, really wish that GroupMe did is an easier login. Now, they've actually changed, made a big change for the better. In the previous version, you had to log in with your phone number, which for me was a horrible issue. Not only do I use Google Voice and have like 10 different SIMs that I use, I can never remember which phone number I actually logged into GroupMe with first. I think it was something that I threw away a long time ago. But their SMS permission system where they'll send you a text to say, is this really your phone? It doesn't always work, and I don't know why.
I had that problem today, actually.
Yeah, it might be that because of their beta, the servers are just under load or something. Anyway, they made it so you can log in with a username and password, but if you've been watching the show, you know what my pet peeve is here. Don't make me type in a username and a password. My credentials are on the phone. Either put the account on the phone or synchronize or federate with an account that's already there. Google Play Services makes this easy. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. You know, typing in passwords is so 2010. Don't make me do it. All right, let's go ahead and move on.
All right, so I think the biggest surprise for me with Trillian is that it actually still existed. And I mean that it's kind of a compliment. It's great to see a company able to leverage their core strengths and really take advantage of new opportunities when they arise. And that's really exactly what the team at Trillian has done. So in the height of the instant messaging federation wars, Trillian was my go-to client for being able to connect to multiple services at once. I was on ICQ, I had friends who were on, what other ones existed? Yahoo? I don't know, there was a
AOL.
bunch. AOL, yeah, there's heaps of them. And so Trillian was a great way to have one app that lived on my desktop PC at that time, was let me communicate with everyone. Because that was the only way we could get things done, was to have clients do the federation for us. Now these days they've taken it a step further and they've added support for some of the newer protocols like Facebook Instant Messaging. I think Skype is either there or on their roadmap. And of course, with most of these conversations now happening from people's phones, it's great to see Trillian offering a mobile app. So rather than being a replacement for SMS messaging like the two apps that we looked at earlier, Trillian is really looking to replace the need for having a number of separate chat clients for each of the different services that you already use. So it's supposed to replace having to have 4 or 5 different instant messaging clients. And they've done a great job of keeping things simple, and you can see that on the screenshot here. And as you go through the app, it really is sort of that cut down, most basic version of how instant messaging apps used to work. You have a list of contacts, in this case separated by the service type, so you can see who your ICQ friends are, which kind of doesn't make that much sense because I don't really care what technology I'm using, what back-end service I'm using to communicate with people. I just want to see the people and communicate with them. And I guess the complexity here is that often people will have multiple accounts on each of the different services, so how do you reconcile that? And I think that's one of the challenges, and something which an app like Trillian could really perhaps put in a little bit more effort to figure out how to do that reconciliation. Otherwise, the simplicity is nice, but really the app just looks a little dated. It could really do with an upgrade to Holo styling. And even better, I'd really love to see them try and develop a rich tablet user experience to complement their desktop and mobile apps. So again, this is an app which was designed for mobiles to take advantage of the fact that people were sending their instant messages over SMS via BlackBerry Messenger and other mobile devices. And so they've made a mobile app as well. I'd love to see them now realize that, tablets are where it's at as well, and develop some tablet app features too.
Feels like one of those things where they could really take advantage of the contact manager. If I
Absolutely.
think about it, having people that have ICQ and Facebook and other different types of accounts is really just like having a friend that has a work phone and a home phone and a cell phone, right?
Exactly, and that's exactly what the contract content provider lets you do. So you can add your own specific content types, and in this case it would be different instant messaging clients. And actually, if I'm not mistaken, I think instant messaging clients is one of the default fields you can use. So they may be better off just leveraging that existing infrastructure.
Definitely. I think that would make me a lot happier. Although it always makes me happy whenever you have to say contacts, provider on air. You can do it better than I do.
Well, it's all about practice.
So let's go ahead and dive into a couple of details that we think would help instant messaging apps in general. And if I had to pick one feature that is absolutely crucial for an instant messaging app, that one thing that you really just cannot afford to get wrong, it's notifications.
Absolutely.
The whole point of instant messaging is that it's instant. You need to know as soon as a message arrives. At the same time, it's also crucial to use notifications wisely. All right? It's terrible to have too many notifications. It's worse than having none at all.
Absolutely.
So that's why on any version of Android, no matter what you're running, you should always make sure you're doing what we call stacking notifications. Now, I sort of don't like the word stacking notifications because it could actually refer to the wrong way of doing things, in my opinion. But here's what the design guide means when we talk about stacking notifications. If you have two notifications that would otherwise be displayed on top of one another, the basic rule of thumb is that your app should never appear more than once in the notification panel. So if you have something new to say, then say it inside your existing notification rather than creating a second notification. For instance, you could add a number pending field to let your users know that there's more to see. Instead of stacking or placing 3 notifications in the notification panel, you can just display one that says you have 3 notifications pending. But if you're running on Jelly Bean or higher, you can actually do a lot better than that. The standard notification builder class has a new style. It's called inbox style. It lets you add a list of strings to your notification. So when the notification gets expanded, the user can see all their recent notifications at a glance. You can see that in the Gmail app, for instance. I think, if you look at this particular style, the view on the right there where it's expanded, I think you can see that's a perfect way to receive a series of instant messages.
Absolutely.
You might also consider going one step further with rich notifications and have some action buttons. For instance, I honestly would really appreciate a button to automatically send a busy message to all my IM buddies.
Yeah.
I'm driving or whatever. Just something that's really, really simple.
Of
course,
I'm in a meeting. Something
right.
slightly less dangerous.
Yeah, exactly. Well, anyway, the point is that there's a lot of stuff that you can do with rich notifications on Jelly Bean, but you don't actually have to be targeting Jelly Bean to get this. If you use a notification compat API, it's easy to support both the old notification style and the new hotness. Just remember that any action buttons you create won't be available on legacy versions of the OS, so you need to have some alternate way to access that behavior. And of course, as we all know, it's usually to just tap the notification and send the user directly to an activity that can handle that notification or expand on it or offer actions.
So using the notification compat API, you're actually able to just have a single code path which has all of the functionality for all of the newest versions, and then it just gracefully degrades back to whatever is supported?
Essentially so, yes.
Nice. Well, that's quite handy.
Yeah, that's really cool. So the code that you see on the screen is ripped from the pages of developer.android.com, and it shows you exactly how to make an inbox style notification. As you can see, it's really quite simple.
And I think in fact if you go to Android training or perhaps the API guides, the notification guide I think has been recently updated to have all of the new hotness explained in some detail. So
yes, in fact, that's where I stole all the previous graphics from.
Outstanding.
Yes, I have been thieving like a madman today.
that's what we do here in as developer advocates. We take all the hard work of our tech writers and steal it and pass it off as our own.
Exactly. Yeah, life is good. What do you have for us today, Reto?
Well, I think it's also worth discussing how these instant messaging apps actually work. The key to a great experience is really balancing that low latency instant messaging with making sure that you're not draining the battery in order to get those rapid updates. So fundamentally, there's a couple of different approaches that you can take. On the first hand, you can maintain an open socket connection between your client running on each device and your server. Now, having an open socket will minimize your latency because the connection is there. You can just send stuff through that pipe, but you really need to carefully manage it so that you're not draining your battery exceptionally quickly by maintaining that socket. So the way that you actually keep the socket open is by sending data or sending keep alive pings to your server at regular intervals, which is going to stop the network from automatically closing those sockets. But if you ping too regularly, you're just going to be keeping the cell radio turned on. It's just going to drain the battery. And if you do it too infrequently, you're going to lose your socket connection anyway. So the latency is going to go up because you're expecting it to be zero latency, but it isn't. You've got the additional cost it takes to initiate a new socket connection. It's just a bad time all round. And figuring out the right frequency is actually really, really hard. It varies between network operators. The sockets that you're allowed to use to have these long-lived connections vary depending on networks. So, it makes it really difficult for individual app developers to figure out. And frankly, that's not the sort of thing that you want to have to be thinking about. You want to be focusing on features, on UI, not how do I keep the data connection going between the app and the server.
Not only that, but even if you got everything right, in order to avoid draining the battery and keep the socket open and get all the behavior that you want, you would also have to synchronize perfectly with any other app that wanted to do this, right? Because even if, let's say, 10 minutes is a magic number, right? My app goes every 10 minutes. Your app goes every 10 minutes. Your app started 5 minutes after mine. Ouch.
Whoopsie. So how can we do that then? So how can we synchronize all of the apps on the device so that they all send pings at the same time?
Well, I think you've got to have somebody send the pings for you.
Exactly. And happily, that is exactly what Google Cloud Messaging does. So we've already figured out the most efficient way to maintain a low latency network path. And in fact, this is something that we can keep track of and continue to optimize and make more and more efficient. So then you can just piggyback on top of that and use it as a mechanism to tell your app when it should initiate a new connection and start transferring those messages in real time. So all of the details for Google Cloud Messaging are available on that Cloud Sync Android training class. So the thing is, though, is that cloud-to-device messaging, or C2DM as we like to call it because everyone loves an acronym, doesn't guarantee the delivery latency. It will definitely get there, but you don't know that it'll get there straight away. Now, chances are it will get there straight away, but one approach to is actually use C2DM to initiate the conversation. So when someone pings you with a message the first time, use C2DM to notify the recipient, who can then create a short-lived socket connection to transfer the rapid-fire messages backwards and forwards. So then you're just keeping a short-lived socket. You kill it as soon as the conversation is finished, and then fall back to waiting for C2DM to wake up your app and listen for new messages. So some apps that we looked at actually chose to use a third option, which isn't really an option, which is polling the server, just pinging your server to check to see whether you've got any new messages pending. And that's kind of a terrible idea because the latency is going to be shocking, unless you're doing it every minute, in which case the battery drain is going to be even more shocking than the latency. And I saw some comments in reviews suggesting that that's what WhatsApp Messenger does to get its messages. So I haven't confirmed that, so I don't want to criticize them too sharply without knowing for certain. But if that is the case, then that's definitely something you want to move away from and move towards a GCM model. So if you have your own servers, polling is never the right answer. So if you're relying on someone else's servers to get information so you can't send a push message, well, okay, then you're going to have to come up with something clever. But if you've got your own servers, then this is going to make your life a lot easier. So yeah, switch to GCM, the sun will shine brighter, food will taste sweeter, and life will in all ways be better.
I switched to GCM. I liked it so much, I bought the company.
So before we sign off, let's take a look at prescriptions for each of the apps that we have looked at today and see if we can't help them move towards a more pure Android experience. So let's start off with WhatsApp Messenger. Hey. So I think first off, what I'd really like to see is tablet support. I'd love to see them make this app work really nicely, create an optimized tablet experience. I think that's something which is kind of missing from this space, where a lot of the focus has been on creating this awesome mobile experience, because that's clearly where their growth is. Tablets seem like the next logical step. You know, when you're sitting on your couch, rather than opening up your laptop to instant messaging people, you can have a richer experience talking to more than one person using a tablet. So
I was surprised at how common it was for some of these messaging apps to rely on SMS, if not as their only transport mechanism, then at least as their primary mechanism.
Yeah.
And that really feels like 5 years ago.
It does. It kind of made sense back when, hey, we can simplify sign up by just checking what the phone number is. But now it actually complicates it, because half of my devices don't have a SIM card in them. You know, I've got tablets, I've got devices without SIMs, so you know, this really just makes my life harder. So a non-phone sign-up flow for WhatsApp Messenger would make my life a lot better. I'd love to see a modernized UI. I'd love to see them using cloud-to-device messaging if they're not already doing so. Yeah.
In the future, none of us will have phone numbers. You're going to be able to ring my email address.
I would like to do that.
Yeah.
That would make me a happier person. What did you think about GroupMe?
Well, GroupMe is in beta, and the beta looks really, really promising. It's hard to say for sure exactly how it's going to turn out. You know, there's definitely some rough edges right now, but
we like the idea of beta releases to try and figure out where you should be investing that time and effort to get the best bang for your buck, right?
Absolutely. In fact, the only thing that disappointed me about the beta is I couldn't get it off of Google Play. I had to go to their website and get it, but that's not their fault. That's probably ours.
No, it would be nice if we offered a way to do a more streamlined beta release via Google Play, but
you know what?
We'll
I'll put in a request.
Let's do that.
I know some people.
Excellent.
The drawer pattern is definitely done in, let's say, not the wrong way, but it's the wrong way.
It's an experimental way, an
wrong.
experiment which went wrong.
It's not the way that we recommend right now, and so I'd like to see them fix that. They also have this sort of, we didn't really touch on this, but they've got this sort of weird thing where the drawer actually opens either to the left or to the right, making it almost, but not quite, like a view pager. So they've sort of mixed a few metaphors, and I think that as they sort of hone in on their final version, they might want to take a look at that and decide whether the user confusion is going to be worth the benefits they're getting out of it.
This is a really interesting example as well, where given that it is in beta, there's an opportunity there to do some A/B testing and just sort of pick one or a few different options, present them to different users, and use analytics to figure out which is the one that people are finding the easiest to use. So I'm a big fan of doing that, particularly in beta. Just if you've got a bunch of alternate ideas, present them all and see which one users actually use and find the most intuitive.
But especially coming from their last version, which was, as I said, a service that we used a lot. I mean, we've always enjoyed using the app, but design-wise, this is head and shoulders above the other one. So hopefully they'll converge onto something that everybody loves, and we'll get all that figured out. The other thing, of course, and this pretty much applies to almost any app that has any kind of login, is let's integrate that sign in. If you're not going to do it with Google, then integrate with something else. Facebook's popular, Twitter is fine. Anything where the user is likely to have an account on the machine. For Android, we usually suggest Google, not because that's who pays us, although it sort of is.
Yeah, it's a little bit.
But because almost all Android devices have a Google account on them.
Yeah, I mean, really what we're just trying to do is make that sign-in flow as simple as possible. And it's something that we're particularly sensitive to because we install a lot of apps. And when we're doing this, and the App Clinic apps, obviously we spend a fair bit of time looking at, but we spend a lot of time looking at a lot of apps. And you just want to, we do it really quickly. We'll download it, we'll open it up, and we want to figure out how this app works, what it's doing right, what it's doing wrong, inside of 15 seconds.
Well, I don't think we're unique in that, because
I think it's representative.
It's very, very common. If a user wants to download an app for a particular purpose, it's extremely common to download 10 of them. And the ones that are going to get looked at first are the ones that don't throw up any roadblocks to finding out what the functionality is. Now, GroupMe is an app that I love a lot, but I think I probably would have skipped it at the beginning because I couldn't get into the app until I had not only put in my phone number, but verified it with an SMS, which I never got.
Yeah.
Now, fortunately, they've fixed that particular flow, but you still have to sign in before you can get to the good stuff.
Absolutely, and this, is something which actually I can see for next week, where we're doing our personal fitness apps, and I actually discovered this exact scenario where I was sitting at the foot of the mountain, ready to go hiking. My wife's like, "We should track how far we go." I think I have an app for that. So I fired up the Trello, looked at all the suggestions, and installed each of them. And the way I chose which one to use was I just opened them one at a time. And as soon as I got to a roadblock, I stopped and checked if the other one was quicker. It's like, you need me to sign in? No. You need me to do a bunch of settings? No. And that's kind of the way people use their apps. They're going, I need to do something. I'm going to download an app and see whether it does that for me. It's not the, I've got some time. I'm going to download this app and see what it does and see how it works. It's not really the use case, particularly on mobile.
And we're being a little unfair because obviously in an instant messaging situation, you have to
sign in.
You have to sign in some
have
way.
Have an identity.
But that's why it's so important to federate or integrate with the context manager and the account manager on the device. Now, I will say in GroupMe's favor that their new beta, if you don't sign in immediately, still has a view pager with some demo screens on it. And it kind of tells you what you're getting into.
See,
I think that's a good effort.
Definitely.
But still, if I could just open it up and it automatically knew, oh, you're this guy, I think I've seen you before, that would make me super happy.
Absolutely. And keep in mind as well that even without doing the federated sign-in that Ian's describing, you can tell me what my phone number is by checking the phone. And you can tell me what my email address is by checking the phone. And so populating those and asking me to confirm them rather than having me type them all in is all things which are going to make that sign-in process smoother.
Absolutely. So what do you think about Trillian?
Trillian, so kind of similar to the first app that we looked at, in that I'd really like to see a modernized UI and improved tablet support. I think otherwise it's good in that it has that focus, and so that's a big thing for me, is an app which has a clear focus. And in this app, they're not trying to reinvent messaging, they're just trying to make it easy for you to use the tools and the services and the contacts which you've already been communicating with on a different platform.
Well, and I guess it's not shown up here because this slide was put together by Trained Monkeys, but the real important thing, I think, is that they should integrate with Context Manager.
Absolutely, absolutely. I've already got my contacts there, put all of that data in there, and that's going to make life a lot easier. So yeah, Trillian's been around for a long time, and so that's why I think tablet support is a big one for them. It's a company which clearly recognizes that there is an opportunity in adapting their service to people using new devices.
But let's adapt all the way. Let's make it work. By the way, you didn't put this slide together, did you?
No, that was my Trained Monkeys.
Oh,
yeah.
Good.
Yeah,
good.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think they're getting there. I mean, this is close. This is 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
I'm pretty happy with that.
That's true. Good point.
All right, so I think just on half an hour, we've managed to keep it to the time frame that we were hoping to this week. So yay us. That's all for us today. Don't forget to tune in to Roman, Nick, and Adam for Android Design in Action next Tuesday from the unflooded New York office, where they'll be setting their design skills loose on some of the instant messaging apps that we talked about today.
And I think they said they're going to be looking at TripIt as well.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I was just talking to Roman, and then he said he had to go because he was on the phone with and then he used a nasty word. I don't know, yeah.
It's not that surprising.
You know why? New York.
Yeah, New Yorkers, man.
Anyway, we'll be back next week taking a look at personal fitness tracking apps.
And the voting in that category has been fierce, so be sure to hit our Trello page and get your votes and nominations in for this week and the following weeks. And that's there's a bit.ly link there at bit.ly/appclinictrello.
Now remember to vote early. Don't be like the people who nominated poor Glyph, which received the most votes this week but was nominated too late to be considered.
We'll try and squeeze Glyph into another week, but until then, here's a quick message to tide you over.
Pencil, square, skull, 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 diamond, airplane, pencil.
Nice one. Until then, I'm Redo Meyer.
I'm Ian Nee Lewis.
And thank you for watching.